Hello, Patriots, and welcome back to the channel. As I travel across the state and speak to different groups, I've had all kinds of people ask me, Mr. Watts, can we impeach Andy Beshear for what he's doing to our beloved state? And I figure if I'm hearing this from these people, there's probably thousands or tens of thousands of Kentuckians wondering the same thing. So that's the answer we're going to give you tonight. We're going to do this by looking at it three ways. First of all, we're going to examine this, the Kentucky Constitution. If anybody out there happens to have an extra copy of the Kentucky Constitution, will you please mail that to the Capitol in Frankfort? Because I think Andy Beshear must not have a copy. We're going to examine what does the Constitution actually say on the process of impeachment. Second, we're going to look at some specific examples of crimes that are being committed or have already been committed by Governor Beshear, any one of which would be grounds for impeachment. And then third and finally, we're going to examine what's the chances that this is actually going to happen when the General Assembly goes back into session this coming January. So make sure you stay tuned to the end. Let's look first at what does the Constitution say about impeachment. It's covered in Section 66 through 68 and Section 84. And it's very similar to the national level. It says the House of Representatives has to bring up charges. If they vote to proceed with that, then it would go over to the Senate, and the Kentucky Chief Justice of the Supreme Court will preside over the Senate as they have the trial. If the governor is found guilty, he can be removed from office and forbidden from holding office again. So a fairly straightforward process, very similar to the national level of doing that. So that's the process, but what are some specific examples? This isn't just, we don't like the way that he's doing things. That would be more of a preference. We need to see specific laws, so we're going to give them to you. The actual numbers of the law, the sections of the Constitution, any one of which would be grounds for impeachment. And this is by no means an all-inclusive list. He's doubtless done many other things that he could be impeached for any one of them. Let's start by looking at the Kentucky Constitution. Do you remember when he first got elected, one of the first things he did was to restore the voting rights of all the felons in Kentucky? Trouble is, that's illegal. He's not allowed to do that. Notice what it says in Section 145 of the Kentucky Constitution. It says, the following persons are accepted and shall not have the right to vote. Paragraph 1. Persons convicted in any court of competent jurisdiction of treason or felony. Well, these people have been found guilty of a felony, therefore they've lost the right to vote. And he's just saying, I'm going to give you that right back just because I think you should. And I think really, is he just trying to buy all these votes? The Kentucky Constitution, Section 145, specifically forbids him from doing that. It says he can give pardons to felons, but he can't just blanketly pardon every single felon ever. It has to be specific individuals. He has also violated Section 49 of the Kentucky Constitution, which says the General Assembly may contract debts to meet casual deficits or failures in the revenue. So remember, Governor Beshear last month borrowed more than $700 million in order to help pay the bankrupted unemployment system that he has destroyed. Well, he's not allowed to borrow and incur debt for the state. It is only allowed to be done by the legislative department. The General Assembly is allowed to contract debt for the state. And what are the terms of this? How come that's not been publicly released? And what's the collateral that he put up here? The General Assembly did not incur this debt. They were not even asked to do this. Governor Beshear didn't even inform them that he was borrowing $750 million. The General Assembly didn't even find out till the rest of the public did. Therefore, he has violated Section 49 by incurring $750 million of debt that he had no authority at all to incur. In addition, the amount is illegal. Notice what else it says. It says, but such debts, direct or contingent, singly or in the aggregate, shall not at any time exceed $500,000. So even if the General Assembly did it, they couldn't borrow more than $500,000 at a time, and he borrowed more than $700 million on no authority. He has also not only violated the Constitution, he's violated Kentucky law. Kentucky law is called Kentucky Revised Statutes, or KRSs. Remember this past election cycle when the governor got elected, we also elected the Secretary of State, and he received an overwhelming vote to mandate because he was pushing for voter photo ID. Well, Governor Beshear said, I'm going to do mail-in ballots this year, and you don't have to have a photo ID. Well, the legislature approved this law, he vetoed it, and they overrode his veto. But he's like, I don't care if you overrode my veto, I said you don't have to do it. The law says, except as otherwise provided, election officers shall confirm the identity of each voter by proof of identification. And so they are required by the law to do this, but Andy Beshear has just decreed, no you don't, even though that is the actual law, therefore an impeachable offense. Also this past month, he got into big problems with the Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife because he fired the commissioner. And he also tried to steal $11 million from the commission and use it for other things. He's not allowed to do either one of those. First of all, notice what it says in KRS 150.061. The commission shall appoint a commissioner of the Department of Fish and Wildlife Resources. It doesn't say the governor does this. It specifically says the commission does this. But Beshear has taken upon himself to do this. It also talks about the firing of this person, lest there be any confusion. In that same law, KRS 150.061, it says removal by the commission for the same cause and in the same manner in which the governor may remove a member of the commission. So it says who removes the commissioner? The commission does. Now they do this using the same process that a governor uses to remove members of the commission. But the commission itself is the only one having permission to remove the commissioner, his or herself. And if they want to rehire the person, the commission's allowed to do that. It says reappointment by the commission. So this commission actually voted unanimously last week to have the Kentucky Attorney General take Andy Beshear to civil court for violating this. And this is also an impeachable offense. Well, it doesn't end there. Let's look at Section 1 of the Kentucky Constitution. Remember, Governor Beshear said you're not allowed to go to church in public. He said not even on Easter Sunday, and if you do, I'll deploy the Kentucky State Police and have them put mandatory quarantine notices on your cars. Not because you have the virus, not because you've even taken a test for the virus, just because you went somewhere I said you couldn't. Oh, you can go to Walmart that day, you can go to Kroger, you can go inside the liquor store, you can go to the abortion clinic, you just can't go to church. Well, that's illegal because Section 1 says the right of worshiping Almighty God according to the dictates of their consciences. The people have the right to go to church if their conscience tells them that they should not forsake the assembling of themselves together. Not apart, together. And if that's what their conscience tells them, they're allowed to do that. Remember, some of the churches in the state challenged the governor's orders in the court, and the court ruled in the church's favor. The courts have said twice now in Kentucky that Governor Beshear never did have the authority to close the churches down. Keep that in mind. If your church stayed open, you weren't violating the law because there never was a law passed. You were not obeying the directive and decree that the governor gave, but that decree has been ruled illegal. And you have no American duty to respond to illegal orders, and you have no religious duty to obey illegal orders. And the court said, Governor, you never did have the authority to close down the churches. Well, he's also violated another right of the people, which is the right to assemble together to protest. It says the right of assembling together in a peaceable manner for the common good. And we've had protests. I actually led the Kentucky Freedom Rally, a protest against what the governor was doing back on May the 2nd. It was very peaceable. We sang the national anthem. We talked about our history. We talked about the law, protested the governor. And he tried to make that illegal, decreed you're not allowed to do that anymore. And we had to go to court, and we won the case because, you know why? Section 1 says we have the right to protest and to peaceably assemble. And we were very peaceable. In fact, when we got done, the Capitol steps looked better than we got there because we made sure to clean all the trash up. Now, this does not protect the riots going on in Louisville or in other parts of our state right now. Riots where people are looting, where they are destroying private property or public property or defacing that is not a peaceable manner, is it? Therefore, riots are not protected under the Constitution. You have the right to peaceably assemble. The governor's really failing in his duties to protect the public and private citizens and public property by not stopping those who are not peaceably assembling. Another violation of Kentucky's Constitution. Well, let's look at one other, and this is the idea that the governor is just making up laws, though that's what the legislative department does. The governor is borrowing all kinds of money, though that's what the legislative department does, and that's illegal, according to Section 28 of the Kentucky Constitution, which says, no person, in this case the governor, no person or a collection of persons being of any one of those departments shall exercise any power properly belonging to either of the others. Meaning, hey, you can't just make up laws. You're not allowed to borrow money. You can't do all of these things which you are doing, which belong to either the legislative department or the judicial departments. You're not allowed to do that. So he can't say, hey, I'm going to fine you for not wearing a mask because, you know what, there's no right of appeal. If they do this, I can't go before a judge. This is just the health department saying this. He's taking the power of the judicial and the legislative, and that violates Section 28 of the Kentucky Constitution. There you have it. Specific examples of how Governor Andy Beshear is specifically violating Kentucky law and the Kentucky Constitution. Any one of these would be grounds for impeachment, and this was not an all-inclusive list. And that leads us to our last section. What are the chances that the General Assembly really will impeach the governor and remove him from office when they come back into session in January? Well, that's going to depend on two things. First of all, who wins seats in the General Assembly in this coming November's election. Remember, we're not just electing a president, we're going to be electing a lot of those at our state level of government. So if you ever needed a reason to go out and vote, I just gave you one. And make sure you vote for a candidate who's going to uphold our Constitution and the principles upon which it was founded into a separation of powers to executive, legislative, and judicial. The founders knew if one person or one group gets the power of the other sections, you're going to have tyranny, it's going to be a mess, and they wanted to separate power. So make sure you vote for someone who's going to uphold the Constitution. And the second thing it'll depend on is the will of the General Assembly after they are in session. And the will is going to be dependent a lot upon if they hear from the people. If enough people contact them saying, hey, we want you to press forward with this, then they will. If they're not contacted by the people and think that's the people's will, then they will not proceed with it. If you would like to contact your state legislator, whether they're in the Senate or the House for your district, all you have to do is call the Capitol. They have an answering service there to leave messages for your legislators. The phone number is 1-800-372-7181. And you can ask to talk to the person for your county in the Senate and in the House. And if you don't know who your person is, you can just say your address and the operators can look them up for you. So that is what goes on with impeachment. Those are the specific reasons to impeach and the chances that it might actually happen. Well, until next time, I'm Lee Watts for Patriot Point. Stand strong, Kentucky, and breathe free.